The crystalline ships of the Meridian Collective emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, their sensors immediately scanning the primitive defenses of humanity's homeworld. Supreme Commander Nix 427 stood aboard the flagship Infinite Wisdom, her bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with barely contained amusement as she studied the holographic display of Earth's orbital infrastructure. Fascinating, she chittered to her science officer, Zex 891. They've barely managed to establish a lunar colony, and their orbital stations still rely on solar panels for power. Her crystalline exoskeleton sparkled under the bridge's ambient lighting as she gestured toward a particular point of interest. And what precisely is that? The science officer's appendages danced across the neural interface, zooming in on what appeared to be an ancient stone monolith floating in high Earth orbit. The object, roughly 20 meters in length, was covered in what seemed to be prehistoric Earth symbols and crude etchings. Scattered around it were several human research vessels, studying it with what the Meridians considered painfully obsolete equipment. According to their unsecured communications, Supreme Commander, they call it the Rosetta Artifact. They discovered it buried beneath the lunar surface 5 years ago and have been studying it ever since. Zex 891's voice carried the harmonic overtones of scientific curiosity. They believe it predates human civilization. Nix 427's tentacles rippled with derision. And naturally, they think it will protect them. How characteristically primitive. To trust their fate to some ancient space rock while barely mastering basic fusion technology. She turned to her tactical officer. Analyze their defensive capabilities. The tactical display highlighted Earth's military satellites, early warning systems, and what passed for their defensive fleet. The Meridians had been observing Earth for months, easily intercepting their broadcasts and communications. They had watched with mounting incredulity as humans celebrated the Rosetta Artifact's discovery, claiming it would usher in a new age of human defense and technological advancement. Their most advanced weapons are particle beam platforms, Supreme Commander reported the tactical officer. Crude, but potentially troublesome in sufficient numbers. However, their entire defensive network appears to be oriented around that relic. They've positioned their strongest assets to protect it. Of course they have, Nix 427 hummed dismissively. Like primitives discovering fire, they cling to any advantage they think might protect them. She expanded the tactical display, highlighting approach vectors for her fleet. Prepare a first contact broadcast. Let's see how they respond to a simple show of force. The communications array pulsed, sending a tight beam transmission toward Earth's primary military command center. Within moments, a response came through, resolving into the image of Fleet Admiral Sarah Martinez, her weathered face set in careful diplomatic neutrality. This is Fleet Admiral Martinez of the Earth Defense Force. We acknowledge your presence and are prepared for peaceful diplomatic exchange. Her voice was steady, practiced, though her eyes betrayed an intense alertness as she studied the alien bridge crew. Nix 427's tentacles formed the complex pattern that her species used to convey superior amusement. Admiral Martinez, I am Supreme Commander Nix 427 of the Meridian Collective. We have been observing your civilization and find your development intriguing. She paused, letting her translator convey the subtle condescension in her harmonics, particularly your reliance on ancient artifacts for defense. Martinez's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. The Rosetta Artifact is indeed a crucial part of Earth's defensive strategy, Commander. We recommend maintaining a safe distance from it. For your own safety, of course. How thoughtful of you to be concerned for our safety, Nix 427 responded, her bioluminescence pulsing with mockery. But I assure you, we are quite capable of handling any primitive technology you might have stumbled upon. Now about the terms of your surrender. Surrender. Martinez interrupted, raising an eyebrow. I don't recall anyone mentioning surrender, Commander. Nix 427's tentacles stiffened slightly at the human's temerity. Perhaps I should be more direct. Your civilization has barely achieved spaceflight. Your most advanced weapons would barely scratch our hull plating. That relic you orbit so proudly. We have studied thousands like it across the galaxy. They are nothing more than the discarded trinkets of long-dead races. She gestured, and her tactical display projected power readings from her fleet into the transmission. We have ships that could reduce your lunar colony to cosmic dust. Weapons that could boil your oceans. Shields that. That's quite impressive. Martinez cut in again, now actually smiling. But you seem to be operating under some misconceptions about the nature of our defenses, and about the Rosetta artifact. Warning signals suddenly flashed across the Meridian Bridge as their sensors detected unusual energy patterns emanating from the ancient monolith. The stone surface of the artifact began to shimmer, its crude etchings starting to pulse with an inner light that defied the Meridian's analysis. Impossible, Zex 891 whispered, his appendages flying across his console. The energy readings, they're unlike anything in our database. The patterns suggest technology far beyond even our theoretical models. Nyx 427's bioluminescence dimmed as she watched the supposedly primitive relic begin to transform. The stone surface was flowing like liquid metal now, revealing complex geometric patterns that hurt her eyes to look at directly. And all around Earth, previously undetected energy signatures were beginning to appear, forming a web of power that her sensors couldn't fully comprehend. You see, Commander, Martinez continued, her smile growing slightly wider. Humanity didn't just find the Rosetta artifact. We learned from it, adapted it, improved upon it. What you're seeing isn't just some ancient relic. It's the key to understanding technologies that your civilization hasn't even dreamed of yet. The Supreme Commander watched in growing alarm as her tactical display began showing power signatures that dwarfed her entire fleet's output. The human ships, which had appeared so primitive moments ago, were beginning to emit energy patterns that suggested capabilities far beyond what should have been possible for their level of development. Would you like to discuss those surrender terms again, Commander? Martinez asked quietly. Or should we show you exactly what happens when humanity decides to stop playing primitive? Supreme Commander Nyx 427's tentacles writhed in agitation as she watched the Rosetta artifact continue its transformation. The ancient stone had completely liquefied now, forming a shifting geometric pattern that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. But it wasn't just the artifact that had changed. The entire tactical situation had transformed in mere moments. Full analysis, she barked, her bioluminescence flashing with urgency. What are we dealing with? Zex 891's appendages trembled as he interpreted the sensor data. The artifact appears to be a nexus point for a vast network of quantum-entangled nodes. We're detecting similar energy signatures throughout their entire solar system, hidden in asteroids, beneath planetary surfaces, even disguised as space debris. They've built an entire invisible infrastructure around this technology. On the main viewport, Admiral Martinez's image remained calm and composed. You know what the most interesting thing about studying ancient artifacts is, Commander. Sometimes the most valuable lesson isn't the technology itself, but the philosophy behind it. The Rosetta artifact taught us that the most advanced technology doesn't always look advanced at all. As if to emphasize her point, several seemingly ordinary asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter began to shift and change. What had appeared to be simple rocks revealed themselves as massive energy collection arrays, their surfaces rippling with patterns similar to the transformed artifact. Detecting massive power buildup, the tactical officer reported, their crystalline form vibrating with stress. The human fleet, their ships are channeling energy through the network. Power levels are exceeding our theoretical maximums. Nyx 427 watched in disbelief as the supposedly primitive human vessels began to emit fields of controlled quantum distortion. The crude chemical engines and clumsy solar panels melted away, revealing sleek ships that seemed to bend space around them. But what truly chilled her was the way they moved, not like ships at all, but like thoughts given form, expressing intent rather than following physical laws. You assumed, Martins continued, that because we hadn't mastered your kind of technology, we must be primitive. But we chose a different path. While you focused on mastering the physical universe, we learned to merge with it. The Rosetta artifact showed us that technology doesn't have to conquer nature. It can become one with it. Across the solar system, more transformations were taking place. The lunar colony, which had appeared to be a simple collection of pressurized domes, was revealing itself as the tip of a vast underground complex. Earth's orbital stations shed their primitive disguises, unveiling structures that defied conventional engineering. "Sir," the science officer's voice cracked with disbelief, "I'm detecting quantum resonance patterns similar to organic neural networks. They've somehow merged their consciousness with the artifact's technology. Their ships aren't just vessels. They're extensions of their crew's thoughts." Martinez nodded approvingly. "The artifact taught us that consciousness itself is a fundamental force of the universe. Your civilization built machines to travel through space. We learned to become one with space itself. Those primitive chemical rockets you observed, they were just a shell game, a way to keep playing small while we mastered something far greater." The tactical display was now showing energy patterns that made no sense to Meridian science. The human ships weren't just generating power. They were tapping into something more fundamental, as if they had learned to draw energy from the fabric of reality itself. "What you're seeing," Martins explained, "is what happens when you take the time to truly understand ancient wisdom, instead of dismissing it as primitive." Each symbol on the Rosetta artifact wasn't just writing. It was a key to understanding how consciousness can shape reality. We didn't just study it. We internalized it, became it. Nix 427's tactical officer suddenly chittered in alarm. "Supreme Commander, the human fleet, they're not actually moving through space anymore. They're folding it. Our weapons can't target something that exists in quantum superposition." The human ships had indeed begun to demonstrate impossible maneuvers, appearing to be in multiple places simultaneously, leaving trails of probability rather than exhaust. The network of transformed artifacts pulsed in synchronization, creating patterns that seemed to reshape the local laws of physics. "The most advanced technology," Martinez said softly, "often looks like magic to those who don't understand its principles. Or in your case, Commander, it might look primitive until it's too late. Would you like to see what else we've learned from our primitive studies?" Before Nix 427 could respond, her sensors detected a new phenomenon. The space around her fleet began to crystallize, not with physical matter, but with what appeared to be solidified quantum probability. Her ships, for all their advanced technology, were being gently but inexorably enclosed in a lattice of possibilities made manifest. "You see," Martins continued, "the real power of the artifact wasn't in its technology. It was in teaching us to think beyond the limitations of conventional physics. Your civilization built better and better tools. We learned to transform ourselves into something new entirely. Now shall we discuss a more equitable diplomatic arrangement?" Supreme Commander Nix 427 watched helplessly as the crystalline quantum lattice continued to encase her fleet. Her finest warships, pride of the Meridian Collective, hung suspended in a web of possibilities that her sensors couldn't even properly detect. But it was the next revelation that truly shook her understanding of reality. "Your weapons," Martins explained, her image now floating in multiple places across the bridge, "are impressive. Antimatter cascades, quantum torpedoes, dimensional shredders, but they all operate on the assumption that reality is fixed and unchangeable. We learned something different from the Rosetta artifact." As if on cue, several human ships phased into existence around the Meridian fleet. But they weren't just appearing. They were emerging from what looked like the quantum foam of space itself, as if they had always been there, waiting in the spaces between possibilities. "Impossible," Zex 891 whispered, his scientific detachment finally cracking. "They're not just manipulating space-time. They're They're rewriting probability itself. The ships aren't moving through space. They're selecting which reality they want to exist in. Martinez nodded, her multiple images moving in perfect synchronization. The symbols on the artifact weren't just a language or a technology manual. They were a map of consciousness itself. Each pattern showed us how thought shapes reality at the quantum level. Your civilization built better machines. We learned to think differently. The tactical display was now showing something that defied all meridian understanding of physics. The human ships weren't just existing in multiple states. They were somehow navigating through probability itself, choosing which version of reality they wanted to manifest. Supreme Commander, the tactical officer reported, their crystalline form vibrating with stress. Our weapons, they're not just ineffective. According to our sensors, they've never been fired. The humans are retroactively editing causality. Indeed, every time a Meridian ship attempted to fire, the energy readings would spike, and then simply cease to have ever existed. It wasn't that the weapons were being blocked or absorbed. They were being edited out of reality before they could even be fired. The most fascinating thing about consciousness, Martinez continued, her voice echoing slightly as if coming from multiple timelines at once, is that it exists outside the normal flow of causality. Once we understood that, thanks to the artifact's teachings, we realized we didn't need to build bigger weapons. We just needed to expand our understanding of what was possible. Around the Meridian fleet, the transformed Rosetta artifact network continued to pulse with impossible energies. But now Nix 427 could see what was really happening. The network wasn't generating power. It was focusing consciousness itself, allowing humanity to reshape reality through pure thought and intention. Your entire defensive doctrine, Martinez explained, is based on the idea that you need to overcome an opponent's defenses with superior force. We learned to simply shift to a reality where those defenses never existed in the first place. Your weapons can't hit us because we choose to exist in timelines where they miss. A new alert blared across the Meridian Bridge as their sensors detected something even more extraordinary. The human ships weren't just manipulating space and probability. They were somehow accessing what appeared to be parallel timelines, drawing on versions of themselves that had made different technological choices. The artifact showed us that time isn't linear, Martinez said, her images now showing subtle variations, as if different versions of her were speaking simultaneously. Every choice creates new branches of reality. We learn to access those branches, to draw on the knowledge and capabilities of our alternate selves. Right now, your fleet is facing not just one Earth, but countless versions of humanity that chose different paths of development. Nix 427's tentacles coiled in shock as she finally understood the full implications. The primitive chemical rockets, the crude solar panels, the seemingly basic lunar colony, they had all been carefully chosen camouflage, selected from countless possible versions of Earth's development. The humans hadn't just been hiding their true capabilities, they had been existing in multiple states of technological development simultaneously. What you're witnessing, Martinez continued, is what happens when a species learns to transcend not just physical limitations, but the limitations of possibility itself. Each of our ships carries the potential of every choice humanity ever made or could make. We are not just one civilization. We are every version of ourselves, existing simultaneously. The quantum lattice around the Meridian fleet began to pulse with new patterns, and Nix 427 realized with growing horror that her ships weren't just being contained. They were being gently shifted through different quantum states, experiencing multiple versions of reality simultaneously. Now, Martinez said, her voice carrying the weight of countless possible futures, shall we discuss how our civilizations might cooperate? After all, there are timelines where the Meridian Collective chose a very different path of development. Perhaps it's time to explore those possibilities together. Supreme Commander Nix 427's crystalline exoskeleton vibrated with a frequency that her species used to express deep contemplation. The tactical situation had moved so far beyond conventional military doctrine that it barely made sense anymore. Her mighty fleet hung suspended in quantum probability, while human ships danced through multiple realities around them. Your offer of cooperation is intriguing, Nix 427 managed, her translator struggling to convey concepts that challenged her understanding of reality itself. But surely you understand that the Meridian Collective cannot simply. She stopped as new alerts flashed across her bridge displays. Throughout the solar system, more human installations were revealing themselves, not through dramatic transformations, but by simply shifting into quantum alignment with this particular reality. "Those are interesting thoughts you're having, Commander," Martine said, her multiple images showing subtle variations of knowing smiles. "In fact, in several timelines, you're already beginning to understand the full implications of what we're showing you. Would you like to access those versions of yourself? The ones who've already grasped concepts that this version of you is still struggling with." Before Nix 427 could respond, she felt a strange sensation, as if her consciousness was expanding. Through the quantum lattice surrounding her fleet, humanity was somehow allowing her to perceive multiple versions of herself, each having made slightly different decisions, each understanding reality in subtly different ways. "Fascinating, isn't it?" Martines continued. "The artifact didn't just teach us how to manipulate reality. It showed us how to share consciousness across quantum states. Right now, you're experiencing what we call probability resonance, the ability to access your own alternate selves." The science officer, Zex 891, suddenly chittered in excitement. "Supreme Commander, I'm detecting quantum entanglement patterns similar to organic neural networks, but on a civilizational scale. The humans aren't just coordinating their ships, they're linking consciousness across multiple realities. Indeed, the human fleet was demonstrating a level of coordination that went beyond any conventional command and control system. Each ship moved not just in perfect synchronization with the others, but in harmony with versions of themselves from parallel timelines. What you're seeing," Martines explained, "is how we learn to make decisions. When faced with a choice, we don't just pick one option. We explore all possibilities simultaneously. Each of our ships exists in a superposition of states, drawing on the experience and capabilities of every version of itself." Suddenly, the quantum lattice around the Meridian fleet began to pulse with new patterns. But instead of feeling threatened, Nix 427 felt something extraordinary, a sense of possibility, as if reality itself was offering her civilization a choice. "We could destroy your fleet," Martine said softly. "In fact, in several timelines, we already have. But those versions of events don't interest us. We're more intrigued by the timelines where this moment leads to something new, something neither of our civilizations could achieve alone." The tactical display shifted, showing not just the current reality but echoes of others. Timelines where the Meridian Collective had chosen different paths of development, where they had discovered their own ways of transcending conventional physics. "Your weapons are based on forcing reality to bend to your will," Martines continued. "Ours work by aligning ourselves with the natural flow of quantum probability. The artifact taught us that the universe isn't something to be conquered. It's a partner in an endless dance of possibility." As if to demonstrate, the human ships began a complex maneuver that defied conventional physics. They weren't just moving through space, they were flowing through probability itself, leaving trails of quantum potential that somehow strengthened rather than disrupted the fabric of reality. "This is our counterstrike, Commander," Martine said, her voice carrying echoes of countless possible futures. "Not with weapons that destroy, but with knowledge that transforms. We're offering your civilization a chance to experience reality as we do, to understand that true power comes not from dominating the universe, but from becoming one with its infinite possibilities." The quantum lattice was changing now, its patterns shifting from containment to connection. Through it, Nix 427 could perceive versions of her civilization that had evolved differently, versions that had discovered their own paths to quantum transcendence. The choice is yours, Martinez offered. You can remain locked in a single timeline, bound by the limitations of conventional physics and military doctrine. Or you can join us in exploring the infinite possibilities that exist in the spaces between moments. After all, in some timelines, our civilizations are already great allies. Perhaps it's time for this reality to align with those more promising futures. In the quantum crystallized space surrounding Earth, Supreme Commander Nix 427 experienced something unprecedented in Meridian history. A moment of perfect clarity across multiple realities. Through the lattice of possibilities that humanity had woven, she could see versions of herself that had already accepted this new understanding. Timelines where the Meridian Collective had evolved beyond their rigid hierarchies and military doctrine. Your civilization, she said slowly, her translator now capable of expressing concepts that had been incomprehensible minutes ago, has achieved something we never even thought to attempt. We built ever larger machines, while you learned to dance with reality itself. Admiral Martinez's multiple images nodded in synchronization. The Rosetta artifact's greatest lesson wasn't about technology at all. It showed us that consciousness itself is the most fundamental force in the universe. Everything else, matter, energy, even time, they're all just expressions of awareness taking form. Around them, the solar system continued its transformation, not through dramatic reveals of hidden technology, but through subtle shifts in quantum alignment. What had appeared to be a primitive civilization, defending itself with an ancient relic, was revealing itself as something far more profound. A species that had transcended the conventional boundaries between mind and matter. Our scientists, Zex 891 observed, his appendages moving in patterns that expressed wonder rather than analysis. They always assumed that consciousness was an emergent property of complex systems. But you've discovered it's the other way around, haven't you? Physical reality is what emerges from consciousness. Precisely, Martinez confirmed. The symbols on the artifact weren't instructions for building better weapons or ships. They were keys to understanding how consciousness shapes reality at the quantum level. Once we grasped that, we realized we didn't need to build bigger machines. We needed to expand our understanding of what's possible. Through the quantum lattice, Nix 427 could now perceive the true nature of Earth's defense network. The Rosetta artifact wasn't a weapon or a shield. It was more like a lens, focusing the collective consciousness of humanity in ways that allowed them to reshape probability itself. The seemingly primitive ships and stations had been carefully chosen expressions of potential, existing simultaneously in multiple states of technological development. In some timelines, Martinez continued, the Meridian Collective discovered similar truths through their own path. Those versions of your civilization learned to merge their crystalline technology with quantum consciousness. Would you like to explore those possibilities? As if in response, the quantum lattice began to resonate with the crystalline structures of the Meridian ships themselves. Nix 427 felt her consciousness expanding further, connecting with versions of herself that had made different choices, learned different lessons. Your offer, she said, her bioluminescence pulsing with new understanding. It's not just about sharing technology, is it? You're offering us a chance to evolve, to become something more than what we are. Evolution, Martinez smiled, is just another form of quantum probability. Every moment contains infinite potential for change. We're offering you the chance to align with timelines where that potential has already been realized. Throughout the Meridian fleet, crews were experiencing similar revelations. The crystalline technology they had been so proud of was beginning to respond to their expanded awareness, shifting and changing as they grasped new ways of interfacing with reality. The greatest barrier to advancement, Martinez observed, is often our certainty that we already know what's possible. Your civilization mastered the physical universe, but remained bound by the limitations of believing that reality is fixed and unchangeable. We learned to swim in the ocean of probability itself. Nix 427 made a decision then, not just in this timeline, but across multiple quantum states. She could feel versions of herself reaching the same conclusion through different paths of reasoning, all converging on a singular truth. This moment was an opportunity for transformation. On behalf of the Meridian Collective, she announced, her consciousness now resonating across multiple realities, I accept your offer of cooperation and evolution. We have much to learn from each other. The quantum lattice pulsed one final time, not with containment or control, but with possibility. As it dissolved, both human and Meridian ships hung in space together, each existing in multiple states simultaneously, their crews beginning to explore new ways of perceiving and interacting with reality. Welcome, Martine said warmly, to a larger understanding of what's possible. This isn't just first contact between our civilizations, it's first contact with infinite versions of ourselves. Shall we begin exploring them together? And so, on a day when the Meridian Collective had arrived expecting to find a primitive civilization defending itself with an ancient relic, they instead discovered something far more valuable. A new way of existing in a universe where consciousness shapes reality and where every moment contains the seed of infinite possibility. It was the beginning of a partnership that would reshape not just their civilizations, but the very nature of reality itself.